Hey guys, this is Derek.
And I'm Ivanna.
Yeah.
I need to start.
Okay, fine.
Hey guys, this is Ivanna.
And I'm Derek.
And this is Til Kingdom Come. This time we can't look at each other because the camera is right there. So last time you guys heard from us, actually this is probably the first video, right?
Second podcast.
So this will be the second podcast, maybe first video. So last time you guys heard from us in the podcast, we talked about what Til Kingdom Come is. So if you didn't check that out, make sure you check it out in the episode before.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you're watching us do this, we're doing a 2-for-1. So please enjoy 2-for-1 specials.
This is either our first or second video. But we wanted to let you know a little bit about our story. Last time we did this, I was only a girlfriend.
And now?
I'm a fiance.
So for those of you listening to the podcast, if you want to see The Rock, you need to go on YouTube.
That's funny, baby.
Plug.
And so we want to tell you guys about our testimony because we have found that it gives a lot of people faith the way that we happened.
That's good.
And kind of like what we've learned from that.
It also helps a lot of people die to
their preferences.
Preferences and unspoken expectations.
Unspoken expectations. We're talking about that in premarital. Also, premarital's great.
Yes.
So we're going to try to keep this under 15 minutes.
Yes. For those in the podcast.
And the video.
Yes, and the video.
So this is taking a long time.
Yeah, because
we're
just
gonna go
doing
ahead
dead space.
And start now.
Right now. So 3, 2, 1, go. So for those of you who don't know who I am and what I've been doing with my life, when I first met Ivanna, that was about 1.5 years ago at the upper room, and we knew each other in passing, but I had gotten a strong call by God to move to Puerto Rico and build a nonprofit organization called God Set Me Free Worldwide, and where my move over there was both very difficult, but it was also very fruitful. We have 22 acres of land in Puerto Rico, specifically Vega Baja, that we're going to one day go back as a family and really start cultivating the land for a bigger purpose we'll talk about on another vlog. And for me, coming back to the States, I saw my return trip as like a business trip. So I came back in April of this year, 2022. And I was marrying a couple in North Carolina. Shout out to Connor and Tiff. And from there, I was coming to Dallas to really meet some donors and try to establish new connections. And the ministry that Ivanna works for.
Shout out to Braveheart Ministries.
Braveheart, 318. I really wanted Peter Lewis and Braveheart to really come to Puerto Rico. I believe that, we had been skating around the idea for years, and I was like, man, we can make this happen now. And I thought that Ivanna would be my way in. And
to Braveheart. In Puerto Rico, not way into anything else.
Yes, and so why don't you pick up everything until Tuesday
I'm going to turn it a little bit around because you started in a different place than I would have.
Yeah.
I moved to Dallas last year, met Derek at the upper room, and I knew he knew God. Like, I was like, okay, you hear from God. You're very prophetic, cool guy. I was like, yeah, he's a good-looking guy, but I wasn't attracted to him. In the process of him leaving to Puerto Rico, the Lord started dealing a lot with my preferences for men and, like, what I wanted in a spouse, what it would look like. And during that interim time, I was not, quote unquote, waiting well. What people say, like, oh, like, just be content and, like, it'll come. Like, I was wailing and travailing, interceding, like, asking friends for words. So shout out to you guys that are super patient. I honestly had a really big desire in my heart to be married and to find my husband, but I did not think it would be Derek. So Derek and I actually did not end up on the best of terms simply because we didn't see eye to eye on something, which is probably a story for another time because love covers a multitude of sin.
Thanks for saying that I sinned.
I touched my own head as well for those in the podcast. Amen. But then when I moved over to Donor Relations as Braveheart Ministries, there was a list of people that were given to me. And in order to start forming connection, I looked at the people that I already knew, and lo and behold, Mr. Derek Diaz was on this list. So we reached out to him. Actually, my admin, shout out to Steph. So it wasn't me, but she reached out to him, got us plugged in for a Zoom coffee. And so we had a Zoom coffee December 11th or February 11th.
February 11th.
February 11th of 2022. And so he was going to Puerto Rico. I was praying for him as my donor. Super cool. Nothing was happening. I was actually just like, I didn't think I was interested because he was a missionary. And I was like, he's all right, like whatever. And so we actually, when he came back, he set up a coffee with Braveheart to get them to Puerto Rico. And that's where I come in.
Right.
So, we went to this place called Magnolia Coffee. So I took him to a place where not a lot of people would think we were on a date if they saw us, because that's kind of the culture of Upper Room. Like if you're hanging out with someone alone, you guys are on a date. So I took him there, and yes, guys, he will say it, and so I'll beat him to the punch. I took him to the garden. Shout out to Back to the Garden, Braveheart Ministries. Just kidding. But upstairs, there's a garden, and we sat upstairs. And what we had defined to be a 30-minute meeting for like a business meeting ended up being a 5-hour meeting. And hour 4, this veil lifted. And from my perspective, I remember just like we finally came downstairs. We had been talking for hours about our testimonies. I don't think we ever really talked about Braveheart. I'm sorry, Peter, if you see this. We were actually building a relationship though, which was good. And I went to the restroom, and in the restroom, when I come back out, I see him, and I'm like, why do I want to cuddle with Derek? And I was like, oh no, what just happened? What happened to you then?
In the same exact way, a veil lifted, and I remember it started upstairs for me, like as we were about to finish. So, as a very secure man of God, one thing that I truly cherish about Ivanna is that when I first met her, like she wasn't afraid to gaze.
To like stare at me so
Yes.
people can see. Look at
Okay.
me.
Okay. There's some things, guys, if you're listening in the podcast,
You're going to
should
want to
definitely
watch
wanna
it on the video.
this one. But I remember speaking to her for maybe about 15 to 20 seconds, and I just locked eyes with her for those 15 to 20 seconds, and she didn't move. Like her eyes didn't like start flickering around. She didn't make no weird eye motions. She didn't look away, like, because you can tell that there was confidence and security in her, like as we were speaking. Like, I don't know what was going through your head, but
I was like, this is a little bit too long to be comfortable, but I'm not intimidated.
yeah. And so it almost felt like a game, but it was kind of cool. Like, who's gonna stare the longest? For me,
Welcome to our relationship.
That's when the veil lifted, and I was like, oh, she's a lot more powerful. She's a lot more than meets the eye. And
Because what was your first thought of me when you first saw me?
oh, I thought she was attractive, but I was like, she's just every other upper room girl.
Guys,
And
please forgive him. We
forgive
plead the
me.
blood. Your sins are forgiven.
Forgive me, any upper roomers that feel looped into that,
I felt triggered by being grouped.
Yes, and I had always been a goer, so to her point, I would say that I was waiting well, but I could say that I was also waiting with a lot of pessimism, and so like I did not know how to be optimistic about my wait, but I wasn't doing what she was doing. Like I wasn't.
I was also going on dates. Also, for those of you that are like, I can't go on a date unless he's my husband, you can go grab coffee with a friend that has asked you there and go as a friend and get to know them. And like, honestly, you'll see what you want and don't want.
And I think the power of our testimony is that each of us have very different views about all of it, which means that there is no one way. Like I didn't date. I didn't go on coffee with anybody. Like there was just like for me it was I'm going.
Nothing.
Yeah, I'm going and that's it. And so as we're about to leave Magnolia, like after 5 hours, I start driving down to Houston.
Wait, but there was a moment on the couch at Magnolia. Don't skip that.
Oh.
So I sat, and like in this couch, I leaned back like this because I was tired. I'm putting the mic up to my mouth. So for those of you that are watching us on video, And I like turned and he did the same exact thing. And I was like, why is he mimicking what I'm doing? Was that a moment for you?
That sounded really cute the way you just said that. I can't tell you if it was or wasn't. I can't tell
Okay,
you if
you
it
were
was or
driving
wasn't.
to
I could
Houston
just
then.
tell. I could tell you that was sweet.
Okay.
Like that we looked at each other and smiled and
Okay. You were driving to Houston.
driving to Houston, and I get to Houston for a bachelor party, and I walk into the bachelor party. We're at Topgolf, and I'm looking at this group of men, and only one of them I really know, Ryan, and I'm like, I think I just met my wife.
Dun, dun, dun.
And I'm confused
That's
because
like 10 hours after we met for coffee.
yeah, I'm confused because I'm like, this is not it. Like, it's Ivanna.
It's Derek.
It's Upper Room. It's Dallas. It's nothing that I thought. And my first initial reaction was, crap, I have to stay. And that was one of the questions that she asked me.
So
during
we'll
our
rewind.
meetup.
During our meeting, I felt from the Lord to ask him, I was like, Derek, and I told him, I was like, don't give me the supernatural, like super spiritual prophet, apostle, Derek answer. I want to know what you would do if the Lord asked you to stay for a year. No clue why I was asking him this. And he was very vulnerable with me, and I really appreciate it. But he's like, I would feel like I failed, like I didn't hear God. And so obviously at that point, I truth bombed him. But in his heart, he felt that pursuing me meant that he had to stay in Dallas. For me, us being together, which my mind hadn't gone that far because I was like, this is cool, but like nothing's really happening. It meant I would have to leave to Puerto Rico.
Yeah, and so to skip over details for everybody, the next few days were constant talking and texting.
Super cute.
It was cute. Yes, very fun. I think we'll do another video on just like some of the details that made it really beautiful for me. But the first week was fun for me, difficult for Ivanna.
Oh my gosh, it was so hard for me, but it was everything I had prayed for. So by day 3, so it was the night before my birthday, Derek and I went to Cava, and which is a Mediterranean Chipotle, sponsor us Cava. We eat there a lot. And as we went there, I had a word of knowledge for the cashier, and he had a word of knowledge for the person that came after. And so the presence of God came to Cava. Everybody came out. We started praying for people, like for healing and salvation. And we're both looking at each other, like in the middle of it, like, is this really happening? So we sit down at this little table in Cava, night before my birthday. We're skipping a lot of things, but we sat there, and I'm like, okay, obviously this isn't normal. Like, this doesn't happen to me with other people that way. What is this? And Derek very boldly lays it out.
Yes.
He says, I like you. This is obviously from God. You're going to be my wife. We're going to move to Puerto Rico. You're going to be a fully funded missionary. We're going to be married before the end of the year. And I freaked out because I wasn't ready for any of that. Like in my mind, I'm like, Lord, you brought me to Dallas. I'm going to marry somebody at Upper Room. I'm going to have Upper Room babies. We're going to be planted here. I'm going to be in person with Braveheart forever. Like amazing. Everything's working out. But the Lord had told me so many times, like he just knew what I needed. He told me he was a good matchmaker and that I didn't need what I wanted, that I had to actually lay it down. And so also by the time Derek came around, I had opened up my heart to a missionary, to someone with Derek's testimony, not necessarily the same, but because people had come into my life that I sat with the Lord and I was like, would I be with a missionary or would I be with someone that's been previously married? And so I sat there with that. And eventually I was like, I think I could. So by the time he came, the Lord had really prepared my heart for him. But I started freaking out. I was like, I don't know if I'm supposed to move. I started feeling a lot of fear. Like, is this the Lord? Is this not? But I was having so much fun with him and I wanted to be around him. Like, I knew that. I don't know how much we're going to tell of this because I feel like this is like a 3-parter. But this is how it started.
Yeah, this is definitely how it started.
And so pretty much the Lord had opened up my heart. I felt ready to date and to meet my mate. But also about a week before he came into my life, I was watching a movie with one of my really close friends, Caitlin, and we're like talking about marriage. And I'm like telling her how frustrated I am because I'm 31 and I'm not married and like what's happening. And she throws up this like prayer and she's like, Father, just bring her husband. And she had so much faith because she had a dream about me getting married. But there was nothing on the horizon, guys. Like, although I had been on dates, I was like, this is not for me. Like, where is he? And it took the Lord lifting a veil. And so since then, I actually had to die to a dream that I had that I thought I knew what my husband would look like, because I started comparing it to Derek. And then Derek prayed this crazy prayer and he was like, you know what? I'm going out of town. So if it is your husband, then I pray that the Lord brings him while I'm gone. And I started bawling and I was like, you're the most like selfless guy I know. You're so godly. How could I be so dumb? And I cried and he cried and we actually thought we were going to part ways about 2 weeks in. He went on a trip and for those next like 2 days, I went through serious deliverance, like finding freedom from a lot of things from my past. So side note, I got saved from a toxic narcissistic relationship. And since then, although I've dated, I never had someone that actively pursued me like Christ, like a lion. And that's one of the things I had prayed for. So I said, Lord, I want someone that will look at me and choose me, someone that'll look at me and be like, that's my wife. And I got it, guys. Careful what you pray, though. And so from those 2 days, after we had parted ways, I actually noticed how much I wanted to be with him. I was like, I don't care who this like what this guy looks like in my dream. I want to be with Derek.
Oh, the chin strap.
The what?
The chin strap.
He said the chin strap. And so I had consciously made a decision. Hold my hand. Just hold my hand. I had consciously made a decision that I wanted to be with him. Like, I didn't want to be with anybody else. Sorry, guys. We can't get comfortable. And I had made a decision I wanted to be with him. At that point, he was actually in Kansas doing the flood, like in a different part of Kansas. And I was going to Kansas, Missouri for the send. And I remember driving up and encountering the Lord's goodness and the fact that the Lord wasn't teasing me, that he was actually giving me something good. And I felt a lot of like faith and like I just wanted to be with him. And so we were going to the send and he was being so patient with me, guys, while I was like, all these nasty things were coming up.
Like I was doing a men's retreat the weekend before, and then we were leading an entire team of people to Wichita, Kansas, to really host a week of missions. And she really just needed to be alone with the Lord during that time. She needed to know that she heard from him and that she would know what she wanted. Because really the beginning week of our friendship, getting to know each other, like I got all the confirmations I needed.
Like
she
85 confirmations, but I didn't get them for a reason.
Because she asked not to get them.
Not in the moment. Before we got together, I remember praying and I was like, Lord, I don't want you to tell me who my husband is. That's too much pressure. You tell him and I'll let him pursue. Ladies, careful with that prayer because the Lord will hold you to it. I didn't get a word from the Lord until 2 months later when he was finally like, Ivanna, you're a daughter. If you want to, you can marry Derek. But I'm jumping forward. Anyways, before I got the word, I was asking people. I couldn't get an answer. Like people were like, oh, he's just asking you to rest. Like, and I wanted a word from the Lord. But the Lord said, you know my voice. Stop seeking for a word that's divination. So that was painful. But so, he got a bunch of confirmations.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know my testimony, which cover very briefly, I was previously married before. My ex-wife had an affair with my co-pastor, and it really sent me on a really hard journey of exploring the falsities of North American Christianity and then experiencing the true living God. And from that encounter, I was walking out singleness and purity and just trying to figure out my life with the Lord. And so for Ivanna to come in at such a pivotal time of my life where God was giving me a lot of opportunity and blessing me in a way that I had never seen before. In the beginning, when she was really unsure, it was very easy for me to really lay on a cross and die, because I had already had the confidence that he'd already been giving me so many good things. Why wouldn't he give me this? And so we went through that really hard week. I mean, I really had to focus on the trip, but I did my best to really give her time. And then when we met each other at the Send, that was May 14th of 2022. I was joking with her. She calls it a lie, but I wasn't sure if I was going to make it to the Send because I was feeling under the weather, and I was really better, but I really wanted to let her know I wasn't coming, so I kept telling her I wasn't coming.
He lied.
So then I could surprise her at the Send. She had met my whole team, and then I showed up and asked her to be my girlfriend that day. And I think for the sake of time, we're going to cut the story here, because then this is where it starts to take a turn where I start to experience a lot of the trauma that I had not dealt with from my previous relationship. And I believe we'll get to like really focus in on how Ivanna saw me during the timeline that she was experiencing her stuff, and then how she's been with me while I've been experiencing this stuff. And then we'll get to the most recent piece of our relationship, which is
Our
recently
engagement.
fiancés. So,
And so we'll leave it here, guys. We love you. Make sure to tune in for part 2 of our testimony. Hopefully we'll just make it a part 2 and not a part 3.
amen.
We love you.
We love you.
Till Kingdom Come.